everyone. Welcome to Tech Innovators Spotlight. We have yet another amazing session queued up for you. I have a partner in crime today. Let me introduce Jeff. He is my peer and he supports this guest. So, Jeff, why don't you, in your words, introduce to our audience your work with Extreme Networks?
You bet. So my name is Jeffrey Bush. I'm an Azure App Innovation Specialist, and I'm lucky to be joined today by Nabil. He is from Extreme Networks. And so we're going to learn a little bit about what Nabil and his team have going on at New Extreme Networks. And we're excited to get into the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Nabil, from Extreme Networks. Nabil, please introduce yourself, your role, and a little bit about Extreme Networks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate that. And Jeff, as always, it's good to see you.
Okay.
You've been on this journey with us for a while now. So a little bit about me. My name is Nabil Bukhari. I work for Extreme Networks. I wear multiple different hats there. I'm the chief product officer, and in that capacity, I have the engineering and product reported to me. I'm also the CTO, so in that capacity, I have the office of the CTO reported to me. Because I don't have much to do, so I'm also the general manager for our entire recurring business, and in that capacity, there are multiple other teams, including sales and stuff, that reports into me. So the good thing is that I have a good balance of technology and business, so it keeps me honest on both sides. That's my role. I've been at Extreme for almost 6 years now. Time really flies. I came in through an acquisition. I used to run the telco business at Brocade, and then through acquisition ended up at Extreme. So a little bit about Extreme Networks. Now, I could take a couple of different routes. I could go and say that we are the largest pure play enterprise networking company on the planet, but I'm not going to say that. I could say that we go all the way from enterprise data center into the core, out into the branches, and have every possible connectivity technology that you can imagine, but I'm not going to say that either. I am going to take a completely different route, which is that the mantra for Extreme, the why for us, is to really reduce complexity. We just believe that there's just so much technology in the world, and there's so many things that are happening, and our enterprise customers, or our customers as a whole, they kind of get bogged by that complexity in messaging. I mean, we're in technology, we love creating acronyms. There's a whole alphabet soup that is out there. So complexity in messaging, complexity in buying, complexity in managing, complexity in operating. And that complexity really slows down innovation, and it raises the cost of getting to the outcome. So at Extreme, everything and anything that we do is related to removing that complexity so that our customers, whoever they are, can get to their outcome faster, more efficiently, and cheaper, hopefully. And that's really who we are. So that's how I would like to define Extreme Networks.
That's amazing. Thank you for that introduction. And it kind of also sets the stage for what we are about to talk when it comes to AI, right? The complexity, but also when you pair up networking and AI, right? Networking is one of the biggest, the most complex things. When I remember like my days when early on in global black belt world, I was trying to evaluate some of the roles, and it's like, okay, but don't start with networking, like start with something else, right? Because it is so complex to, simplify, right? And in general, we have so many complexities that it's just hard. And especially when it comes to networking, it's even harder. So that kind of sets the stage when it comes to sort of how big of a problem that you have tackled now with AI. So tell us a little bit about some of the products, some of the launches. Give us a little bit of flavor of what's about to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, so you're spot on. I mean, it's just, and even like when you go out in the industry and you talk to your customers, they have this view of networking people like they go out in some dark cave and does some like black magic. And yeah, it's still it's not a very well understood portion of technology, but at the same time, it is present everywhere. I mean, you can't have anything in the modern world unless you have connectivity, right? I always laugh about it as like, look, Every age of humanity can be characterized by something. We have the Stone Age and the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and then the Steam Engine Age, and before that, the Printing Age, and then the Internet Age, and so blah, blah, blah. But currently, we are living in the world which is characterized by connectivity. Everything and anything is connected. From our daily lives to doing this podcast, we're all in different places. Audiences are probably all over the world. Anything and everything that we do in our life rides upon this belief and this promise that everything is connected. And that connectedness is actually lit over by networks. So it's present everywhere. It's the steam engine of the 1800s where everything rides on top of it. So, but anyway, so what is it that we are doing around it? So some of the bigger things for us, I'm not going to go deep down into the products, but I'll talk about it more from a philosophical, and intellectual point of view. We really believe that there is a big shift that is happening in connectivity and secure connectivity, and that is to move away from the world of products into the world of platforms.
Mm.
And there's a whole slew of marketing, jargon around it. What is a product and what is um, what is a platform and stuff. But I'll describe it in simple English, right? So I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and trust me, like trying to, tell them and explain to them what I actually do has helped me so much because then I can describe it the way. So recently, my 5-year-old, he's actually turning 5 next week. And he was asking me about something because he heard me talk on a call, right? And he's like, so he asked me, he comes and he asks me, Baba, what are you talking about? What is this platform thing, right? And I was like, oh my God, how do I explain it to, a 5-year-old? And this was my explanation to him. So I picked up a toy that he has and I was like, look, this is a toy, right? And it was a little, Paw Patrol thing, right? And I was like, this is a toy. You buy this toy, you play this toy, and it'll always be this toy. And he's like, yeah, I get it. And I was like, here, you have this Lego set, right? And this Lego set has all of these different blocks, right? And you can make anything that you want out of it. And he's like, yeah, I get it. But I was like, tell me which one is easier. And he was like, well, of course, this Paw Patrol thing is easier for me to understand. But I was like, which one is more fun? And he's like, well, this Lego thing is more fun for me. I was like, now let's pick this Lego set, which is actually made out of bricks, Lego bricks, but it makes this car. So you know that every piece that you need to make that car is present in this and will go together and will get you to make that car no matter what your skills. It's like, this is awesome. I can make this car. And then he goes on. And it's like, and then when I want, I can take another Lego piece and put on top of it and add a person to it and stuff. And I was like, you got it. That's platforms. Platforms are neither products that only do what they're supposed to do. They are neither like, a set of Lego bricks where you can make anything with it because that's difficult, right? It requires a lot of skill. It is a collection of curated Lego blocks that will get you to that outcome no matter what your skill set is. But as you grow, you can modify it. So it brings the best of ease of use and flexibility into one thing. I describe platforms that way. And Extreme Networks is the first company in the networking world that has launched a broad-based platform where everything that we do is available as part of that platform. So it could simplify everything for you, but allow you to innovate on top of it when you're ready. I'll stop there. That's my definition of platforms.
It's like, hats off. That's a great way to explain. That's a great way for our audience as well to follow, right? For anybody who's interested in just learning about AI, even if they don't have the technical skill set, it's like, yeah, I follow. I understand what Extreme Networks does. I know you and Jeff have worked very closely. Jeff is very interested in kind of queuing up a few questions. Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, no, and Nabil, we've talked about this before. Like networking is not new. It's been around for decades. But what was that turning in point when in your time at Extreme when it was decided, hey, let's go build this platform, let's leverage AI? Can you recall that moment and kind of what the thinking went in behind that?
Absolutely, Jeff. And I know we've talked about this a little bit as well, because I kind of described the platform, and the platform really came from like, hey, our customers want ease of use and that surety of outcome, but they also want to have the flexibility to mess around with it and optimize it a little bit. And that's where platforms came in. But another angle why we wanted to go to the platforms was really because of AI. So let me take a little bit of a swing back. Right? When people ask me about wrapping their heads around AI, I take them all the way back to when these cell phones came out, the smartphones came out, and I was like, so what happened? Smartphone came out, you made the call the same way, but what changed? What changed was there's an app for it.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden you could put like hundreds and thousands of apps, and yeah, it got a little out of hand, and then we have thousands of apps on our phone, and we use four of them, and that's we get that, but there was an app for it. Then when AI came out, and I'm talking specifically about generative AI because AI has been around for 50 years, and our
Yeah.
first AI product was about 5 years ago. Now that
Right.
was, what we consider now as classical AI and machine learning and stuff. So we have productized AI for a very long period of time. So when now I talk about AI, I'm going to talk about this whole transformation that happened post generative AI, just as a reference point. So then when generative AI came out, it, what happened after that? We went from there's an app for it to there's a chatbot for it.
Right.
Every application kind of put a chatbot on it. And don't get me wrong, it was awesome. It was fancy. You could chat to it and responded like a human, and everybody was like amazed with it. But it has limited value to it. Why? Because if it's a chatbot on an app, then its scope is the same as the scope of that application. So now, if you think about it, so we are applying AI on these inherent silos so they can only have that much value to it. And we thought about it and we said that, look, the true value of AI is when it has access to a lot of different data, but that is also where everybody gets scared of it, right? That's where, the data privacy and data governance, becomes really, really important. And we're like, what's the best way to do it? And the first thought was like, okay, well, let's just have all of these chatbots talk to each other, right? And we have all been in app development and in technology. Yeah, good luck with that. Every application is such a silo. And if you're going to go over the top and have these chatbots talk about it, it was so messy. And trying to provide governance and security and accuracy on that was almost impossible, right? So we said there's a better way to do that. And the better way to do that is we're already doing these platforms, and these platforms bring all of these capabilities in a very structured fashion and all of the data that is related to it there as well. So now this data exists in this platform. It's a lot more easier and proficient and efficient to govern it and secure it and categorize it and classify it and all of those different things. Now let's apply AI on top of it. And that was the aha moment that the true promise of AI will only be unlocked when you take the AI capabilities and the platforms and merge them together, where AI is not a chatbot anymore. AI is not something that rides on top of it, but AI is one of the core services of the platform. And that was really, Jeff, the genesis of when we started working with you guys, and we are like, there's a better way to do AI. And now, as we roll it out to our customers, and our customers are getting exposed to it, they are starting to realize that AI is not something that you go to. You don't open a chat bot and go ask it a question. AI is something that is available inherently in every workflow that you do. Now, you can decide to use it or not because you got to allow human the ability to do that. But that was the aha moment for us. Let's not build a chat bot on top of application. Let's take AI and build it as a core competency of a platform and then make that available to our customers. So you asked for the aha moment. That was a big, in
Yeah.
hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, that obviously that's that way. But in that moment, it was a big wow,
Right.
something got unlocked.
And
Yeah.
I mean that's when we started working together about 2 years ago too, and we've taken your teams across different product groups across Microsoft, getting introduced to different techniques and how to use AI in their products. And it's been really cool to see the evolution of what Extreme has done and will continue to do. So I'm just curious, what does success look like for Extreme Networks with having this ability to use AI this way?
Oh gosh, I can define success from multiple different hats that I wear, but in the end, I'm a very human centric person. Regardless of all of the tech that we're building, I always believe that technology has to be in the service of humanity. At that philosophical level, but that's true at the philosophical level, that's true at the business level, that's true at the product level. In the end, success looks like delivering value to the customer that the customer can see, imagine, perceive, quantify, and wrap their heads around. If a customer has to be like sit there and have to listen to 18,000 different messages and their eyes are rolling back in their head and they're like, I don't understand it, but since my neighbor is doing AI, so I'll do AI. That's not value, right?
Right.
Value is when it is tangible, and you don't even have to explain it to the customer. The customer goes and says like, gosh, I used that and look what I accomplished out of it. So delivering that value is success. And then from that value obviously comes ARR and revenue and profitability and all that kind of stuff. But success looks like delivering that value where customer sees it, adopts it. That's really what success is for us. Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing, Bill. You touched on a couple of things that I want to kind of go deep dive into. One of them is sort of bringing that customer problem solving skills, right? Like that's sort of at the forefront of whatever you build. And this goes back to something that Satya says as well in a broader term of like, hey, we should be adding GDP to the world, to the countries. Like that sort of is what really drives. It's yes, it is about our bottom line. And yes, it is about our products being successful and all of that. But the core infrastructure kind of lies around that, right? Like that's where we want to build is to make and empower other people and empower other companies. And I think it's very similar to what you're saying. Is like we want to make sure that it is useful. Whatever we build solves that problem for our customers, right? And when it comes to this particular platform, which is Extreme Networks Platform One, right? Like that's what we are talking about here.
Mhm.
What is that problem that AI will solve with this big launch for our customers that they were not able to do it before?
Right. So Shali, that's a great question. And look, I mean, I'm a big fan of Microsoft. I'm a big fan of Satya, and I think he gets it. And so when he speaks about it, and it resonates with us because we're kind of very similar. The thinking process is very similar. It's all around that value, right? And we also, so to answer your question, what is it that it solves for the customer? So we have hundreds of thousands of customers globally, right? And who's who of the world is a customer. And I talk to all of them. I spend a lot of time external. And so all of these executives at these companies, the senior most leaders, they ask me like how to think about AI. And I always tell them the best way to think about AI is to not think about AI. And as a business leader, you shouldn't be thinking about AI. And then they're like, wait, well, what do you mean by that? And so we kind of, and through conversation and in trying to explain this to other people, we kind of came up with this kind of fun methodology. And of course, as I said, we are technology people. We love to create acronyms. So we call it the ARC framework, right? And we say like, look, it's an ARC. And they're like, what do you mean by an ARC? We're like, look, so A stands for augment or accelerate. R stands for replace, and C stands for create. So don't think about AI. Think about in your business. What is it that you want to accelerate? What is in your business that you want to replace because it's inefficient or inefficient and you don't want to do it, or everybody hates it and people say like, oh shit, this sucks, but I have to get done and blah blah blah. So that's the replace part. And then eventually the create part. And I think that's what Satya is talking about, like adding GDP to the market. And that's really the arc. And then you go about and you say, you start adding these use cases into these three buckets, and that's it. That's your roadmap for AI. Start from the accelerate part because that's slightly easier and to understand and stuff. And that's the way to think about AI. So, and that is also how we think about the value that we are delivering through Platform One. Platform One, with the whole AI part in it, its core purpose is to accelerate things that you already do and you want to continue to do. As an example, if it takes you, 10 days to generate an analytics insight report, now it takes you 10 seconds to do that. If it takes you months to design a network, you can go in with our AI and it'll design for you in minutes, right? We are massive in stadiums and venues and stuff. If you go to a sporting event in the United States, chances are 90% of the time you're connecting to our networks, right? And these stadiums and these venues are complex, or airports. We have big airports and stuff. These are complex environments. People spend years optimizing the RF, in these environments, the Wi-Fi in that environment. With AI, you can do it like within days. You can run hundreds of iterations and figure out what's the right one, and you're done, right? So this is acceleration. There are thousands of use cases in networking that can be accelerated, and that's the first category of use cases that Platform One delivers. The second category of thing that Platform delivers is things that honestly we have had to do it, but we don't need to do it anymore. For example, who wants to call support and sit and listen to that elevator music for 15 minutes, right? Nobody. And then who wants somebody somewhere in the world to come up and say like, oh, well, you have this problem. Can you check if it is connected? Did you turn on the power button? I mean, they're reading through the script. I don't blame them at all. That's the script that somebody did. But these are experiences that nobody wants. So you can replace them. So, in our Platform One, the Platform One, through its inbuilt core AI, finds the anomalies itself, troubleshoots it itself. If it can fix it, it'll fix it and send you a ping that, hey, this problem happened, I fixed it. And if it cannot fix it, it will open a ticket automatically for you and tell you that, hey, by the way, I opened a ticket for you. That's a great experience, right? It's not rocket science, but from a human point of view, it replaces a lot of pain, out of it. And the last one is then obviously the create part, where the limit is your imagination. So we think of the value that we deliver through Platform One in that context of what can we accelerate, what can we replace, and what can we create, which is brand new and wasn't possible before. So, and there's hundreds of examples in each one of them, right?
Just the breadth of the, I would say that not just the use cases that it touches, but also the life cycle of those use cases that it touches, right?
Yeah.
And it enhances every time that it goes from there. So if we pick sort of some customers who are running things on-prem, and now you have this connectivity and this availability and ability to leverage extreme networks and AI, and how fast they can scope from one set to the other is something that's just very profound, right? Like that makes AI so much more, I would say, exciting. And also, that's why you see the scale that you see with AI, is because you can do the things that you were not able to do previously. And now with AI, you are able to do all of
100%.
those things rapidly, right? Without a lot of investment, right? Without sort of thinking through, oh, now I have to plan for a couple years, right? Go ahead.
So that is the magic word that you just mentioned, right? So, I give talks on AI all the time, and people ask me like, "Oh, what's the most transformative point around AI?" And people expect that I'm going to talk about some LLM, this or that, and no, technology is amazing, but the most transformative part of AI is that it reduces the barrier to entry. Think about this, right? There used to be like, oh, I want to do this, but gosh, it takes too much investment, too much time to build this, or train people and stuff like that. With AI, it reduces the barrier to entry, which then spurs innovation in itself. Now, I'll give you an example of that, right? Think about, and again, taking a completely non-technical example here. So again, going back to our customers and we go around the world, one of the biggest challenges that technology and business leaders talks about, they talk about the availability of talent, right? They're like, we want to do that, we just can't find people to do it, right? Okay, well, if you can't find people, then you need to find people that are not the right ones and you need to train them, and that takes a lot of time and cost and stuff.
Yes.
On average, I'll give you a simple example. For one of our partners, for example, it could take weeks to train a new employee on the technology that they sell. Now, that is 3, 4, 7, 8 weeks that they're not doing, they're not in the field, they're not selling, they're not productive. Similarly, you go to a customer and the customer says like, oh shit, my amazing network engineers, they are retired now. First, the new kids don't want to get into networking. And if they get into networking, they're like, wait, what the hell is this? I don't want to read through 18,000 protocols and stuff like that. How do I become valuable really quickly? Now, these are real world problems. They might not be sexy, but they hit your top line and your bottom line, right? Now, with AI, what can you do? We can make a high schooler that comes out of high school, has no understanding of networking, and getting them to a point where they are designing and operating pretty complex networks within days. And how do you
Wow.
do it? You do it by fundamentally rethinking it. The knowledge does not need to sit in your head. It needs to sit in that agent, or in the Microsoft world, that Copilot that is always with you. If you can find that information instantly at any given moment of time perfectly, then why do you need to remember it? You don't, right? It's a fundamental change. So these are the things that we have built into Platform One. And the other part, Vrushali and Jeff, that I would point out is that, look, not everybody wants to interact or interface with AI the same way. Okay, conversational interfaces are one interface, but there are other ways interfaces, right? So we introduced Extreme AI Expert, which is our conversational interface, and you can chat with it, right? You can either do it or you can do it with your voice or whatever. It's just typical, just like any other chatbot. It's in a conversational interface, but it's a conversational interface to that core AI that is platform wide. But there's another interface. Sometimes, let me take another example. Um, in the world of business, and this is funny. So, where a lot of companies spend and waste a lot of time is generating insightful reports.
Yes.
People go in and like, oh, I'm going to take this data from this system and this data from, there's entire industries that are built just solving that problem. Not that I'm trying to take away their jobs, but that's reduction in speed, and that's complexity in the process, right? So we were like, okay, well, how do we do that? So we created Extreme AI Canvas. And what that is, that as it sounds, it's an empty canvas, and you ask questions to your conversational thing, it responds, and you drag and drop it onto the canvas. You are building that picture that you want. And once you have built that picture, you can save it. And by the way, it's a live picture, because anytime when you look at it, it will be updated to that point with real-time data. Now, all of a sudden, it's not just conversational, it is that visual, and it is also that reporting and analysis and stuff. So that's the second way you can interact with R. And obviously, then, like, I would be remiss if I don't talk about agents, right?
Right.
And so the third is agents. And what is agents? So I recently gave this talk in New York, and people ask me, like, hey, how do we think about agents? So I was like, I don't start thinking about agents as AI agents. I start thinking about agents as job descriptions. I was like, how do you go and find human employees? You write a job description, and then you say, like, this is what this job title will do. And then you go find the person that does it. How do you define agents? You define it exactly the same way. You say, this is the job to be done. And then you create an agent with it, right? And now the beauty of the agents is that agents are these well-defined roles with tasks and stuff. And that is yet another way of presenting, AI. And I actually believe that there's amazing technology behind the scene, and Jeff is helping us with that a lot and bringing this out to the market. But from a business point of view, it solves that problem of the ROI. Right? Because right now, a lot of the times you go out in the market and people are like, oh, well, we have invested a lot of money in AI, but maybe we are struggling with defining the ROI and stuff. But if you start by defining the job, then you already know the ROI for that job. You don't go and say that, hey, I went out and I hired a CTO, or, and I hired Nabil, and I don't really know what the ROI of having him in the company is, because you define the ROI when you define the job. So if you start thinking of agents that way, it will solve the biggest hurdle that we have, or one of the biggest hurdles that we have in proliferation of AI in enterprise, which is a very crisp definition and determination of ROI, and agents will help with that massively. And I think agents, the packaging of agents with the platform-wide AI, this is going to be the watershed moment of adoption of AI outside of the typical use case of writing an email or a marketing campaign and stuff. We understand those. But going into your critical systems and stuff, that is going to be the watershed moment. And with the help of Jeff and the team at Microsoft, and know we are engaged at such a broad level with you guys. We expect ourselves to be the first ones in the networking world to get there to that watershed moment. So it's exciting.
It's very exciting. I mean, and I mean, you just talked about the platform one, but are you able to share some of the things that are coming or you guys are working on in the next 6 to 12 months, as the speed of innovation is happening so fast? So I'm interested to hear what's on your guys' roadmap that may be useful.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. I mean, you're right. It's a month in today's world is like 5 years in the
Right.
in the previous world. It moves so fast. Look, so we talked about platform one, we announced it, and it's actually going to go limited availability pretty soon out here. And as part of this, I talked about it, the Extreme AI Expert, and then Extreme AI Canvas. And then the rest of the stuff is more around this agentic AI. And I kind of gave you a little bit of an idea that we think about agents more in terms of jobs to be done. We think about them as almost human jobs. And of course, the idea is not there to replace all human jobs out there with agents. That's neither the goal nor that can happen. But the idea is to augment that. And there are multiple ways to augment this. One way to augment is that here's a job description and here's an agent that is attached to you to make you more proficient. So this is also, I'm without announcing stuff before announcing it, but I'm giving you an idea where we're going. So those are one kind of agents. The other kind of agents is that, hey, now this function can be fully contained in an agent, but now this agent need to interface with other agents.
Okay.
Just like humans do.
Right.
You have an engineer, you have a product manager, you have a QA person, you're a service support person, you have a salesperson. They all have to interact with each other to make a business successful. That is exactly how agents will have to work. They will have to cross work with other agents in there. So you can think of we'll definitely bring an idea there. The third part is there will be no one company that will write all of the agents. That's a non-starter, right? Which means that now these agents could be first party, which I mean written by Extreme in our context, or in your context, done, productized by Microsoft, or it could be second party, which in case would be your agents. You are a partner of ours, so the things that you have, they are considered a second party agents for us. And then there'll be a third party, which the customers will write themselves. So now that opens up the questions, how do you organize them? Now think about this way. All of a sudden with agentic AI, now you're thinking about org structures again.
Sure.
Just like we think about org structures in humans, right? So I'm kind of, again, without announcing thing, I'm kind of giving you ideas of where we're
that's
headed.
great. That's a great feedback.
We'll get to the place where entire organizations can be built between first, second, and third party agents. And then, of course, they will always interface with humans out there as well. It is just mind blowing what is possible, right? And it's actually, the funny thing about AI is that, and I was actually talking to somebody this morning where I said, do an experiment. Pull 8 people in a room, put a blank sheet of paper in front of them, walk into the room and say, you can draw anything, you have 60 seconds. I can guarantee you half of the people will draw nothing. Because it's human. When you can do anything, then you get stuck in doing anything, right? And that's the nature of it. And I think that's where we are with AI. You walk into an enterprise customer, you're just going to, what can I do with AI? You can do anything. All right, that's the end of the story.
Right.
And then you can come back in 6 months and they would have figured out what they want to do. So we want to get past that hurdle, and these first, second, third party agents with inbuilt, org structures and stuff, that will really fast track that stuff. So we're pretty excited about that.
Sure.
Um, and we are not talking years here. We are
Right,
talking
right.
we are talking weeks and months here. So
Mm.
lots of exciting stuff. Yeah.
That is incredible. The pace with which you are moving is just mind-blowing, right? And you touched upon so many things, which goes back to how you introduced yourself. So let me ask you this, because when companies have C-suite execs, they have CTO role, CDO role, CISO role, CPO role, right? Like all of these, you wear several of those hats as one person. Um, Talk to us about, behind the curtains when it comes to these projects. How is it helping you move fast? Because we are clearly seeing you're moving fast, right? Does that play a role at all? Because now everything is like, okay, it all boils down to this one team, and the dependencies are very clear, and we have a clear line of sight of the ROI and the deliverable that's
Mhm.
ahead of us, right? Because there are so many companies
Yeah.
who also have that complexity of the org structure. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that.
Oh gosh, that's a big topic, Vrushali. I can
Just a
I
little
can
bit.
speak for yeah, I can speak for days on this, and I can be very controversial on this. But look, my thing is like I just want to share how I feel and what has worked for us. I'm not in a place to
Hmm.
pontificate and tell people
Yeah.
how they should do it. They're the ones who will figure out. But in
Yeah.
my view, things like AI that will force a fundamental change in the way we organize companies.
Mm,
Because companies, if you think about this, are generally organized by function, right?
mm,
They're
mm,
functional. Okay, here's the engineering team, here's the product team, here's the sales team. Some organizations have evolved a little bit, and they're maybe in operational mode, right? What I believe that the organization of the companies will have to evolve towards an outcome-based organization, which will be very
mm,
fluid, right?
mm,
Where we will go back, and I laugh about is that the time of the Renaissance person is coming back.
mm,
We are kind of fast moving away from specializations, these deep specializations, and the people that will be successful, they will know a little bit about a lot of different things to be able to
mm.
then bring this AI to bear and bring value. So we are going to go
Wow.
back to this Renaissance person,
Mm,
in terms of organizations. I expect now the human side moves much slower than technology. So I'm not going to say
mm,
that this change is going to happen in the next 2 years, but I would say when we look at org structures in another 5 years, they are going to look very, very different. And
mm,
some of
mm.
it, a lot of it is going to be forced by these fast moving trends like AI. Because think about, yeah,
Yes.
in AI, what's the moat in AI? It's a very relevant question, and I don't want to get into the broader news cycle here. But the moat on AI is velocity.
Mm,
There is no other sustainable mode when it comes to AI. Money is not a sustainable mode. The next Bex
yes.
LLM is not the sustainable mode. None of this is sustainable mode. The real mode is velocity, right? And if you generally look at it, there is no velocity problem in technology when it comes to AI. Actually, it's moving too fast, if you
Right.
Mm,
would.
mm,
Where we
mm,
will see the biggest hindrance in velocity around AI is going to be
mm,
the way, one, how information is organized within companies, and second, how companies are organized themselves.
mm,
And then, so now think about here is this wave which can be fundamentally transformational for humanity. Forget about just
mm,
businesses. And
mm,
here are
mm,
these things that are going to slow it down. So, what is going to happen? These hindrances are going to have to be changed. There
mm,
is no chance, and
mm,
one should never make these kind of sweeping statements, but I feel confident enough that I'm going to make it. There is no stopping the
mm.
transformation that AI has started and will bring it about. There is no stopping it. There's
100%. Yes.
directing it and managing it, and that will require us to go and take these hindrances out. And the
Mm.
organizational structure of companies is one of those hindrances. Now, before all
That's
of my
very
peers
well
send
put.
me like flaming messages, I'm not trying to change anybody's job description and stuff, but
No,
but
this is
just
this is very
thinking
well put.
about how to get to
Yes.
a point.
Yes, because everybody's thinking. That's why I wanted to ask, right? Like, it's a perfect example. So thank you. Last question from our side. If our customers want to go experience AI Expert, Platform One, all of the capabilities that you have, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we announced Platform One, and Platform One is going to be limited availability in another 8 weeks around here. And at that point, the best way to know about it is to experience it. Because that's another thing around AI. It's very difficult to describe AI, right? It's
Yeah.
easier to understand that or just experience it to be able to understand that. And this will be, limited availability in the next 8 weeks. And then we will actually be in Paris at our Connect user conference. Actually, Microsoft will have a big role in there as well, just like last year. You
Yeah.
guys will be standing with us on the stage. That will be a great place for people to know more and experience. And then after that, it just goes GA, right? And
everybody
that's
can
the
get their
path.
hands on it.
That's the path. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, both of you. This was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Nabil.
This was.
Vrushali,
Yes.
I'm gonna ask for 1 second because I want to say something.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
you didn't ask me that, but I want to say that, and which is I want to give a massive shout out to the entire team at Microsoft. Jeff and his team, and my dear friend Eduardo. I don't know if he's going to be listening to this or not, but look, it is, and the reason why I'm saying is because if you are a product company out there and you want to get to this AI journey so you can productize it and get ahead of the market and stuff, you cannot find a better partner than Microsoft. And to all the audience, no, Microsoft did not pay me to say that. but it's look, they have great technology, and so does everybody else. I mean, from a technology point of view, there are a lot of technology providers that are out there, but I will highlight this human aspect of it. I mean, like the kind of collaboration that Jeff and his team had with, on our side, Marcus's team, and the way, Eduardo kind of like leaned into this as well. It really truly felt like we were not talking to somebody else, but our own internal teams. And we credit a lot of the velocity of our thinking and our execution to that partnership. So I wanted to just give that shout out because
Thank you.
AI is one of those things you can't do it alone. It takes a village, if you want to build a village, you will be hard pressed to find anybody better than Microsoft to be in that village. So I'll hand it back to you, Vrushali. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yes, we did not pay, but I really, really appreciate you and Jeff, of course, the rock star that he is. This is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening and dialing in. As you know, this episode will be launched sometime soon. And so we will put all the assets in for our audience to kind of go and explore all of the new products that you have on the docket. And until next time, see ya.
All right, thanks, Nabil.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Innovators Spotlight podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Want to learn more about the AI innovations discussed? Visit techinnovatorsspotlight.com for more resources and insights from Microsoft and our technology partners. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to uncover the stories that are shaping the future of AI.